Games Workshop has implemented a frequently asked questions system where we ask questions and we get answers. We have asked many questions of Games Workshop, and it's good that they have now given answers. In the past it was things like, how do demo charges work, when do we get them back, what's happening? And there was nothing, no FAQ. Well, now there is. The big changes are for the Genestealer Cults, but there are also changes to the core rules. Yes, the core rules have changed again. They affect everyone. The core rules are being updated frequently, but at least this change is pretty mild. The pivot values have changed once again. Pivot values was something introduced in the last balance patch that meant that when you are moving a vehicle, you don't need to measure each point of the hull and go a little bit and then rotate and measure that rotation and then move your tank again. Now it's, you can do as many spins, flips, pivots, sliding around on your tank girls and Panzer style.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Higher on the street and I know it's my time to go.
But there's a movement tax that just goes flat with that. So no matter how much you spin your Rhino around, all of the spinning will cost you 2 points of movement. In theory, it's a bit easier. In the documents the Games Workshop had released, there were 3 different ways to do movement. There was the core rules, the document as was, the rules commentary update, which had one way of doing it where there was pivot values for vehicles, not for others, and then there was the Pariah Nexus companion. It was annoying if you were playing under the tournament conditions of the Pariah Nexus mission deck tournament compendium thing, because your bikes would have a pivot value because they weren't on a circle base. That could really pull away from their movement, which was something that didn't affect like the Wolf Quad in the same Jackal Biker unit. Well, now the rules commentary has been updated, and that has set pivot values for different units, and the Pariah Nexus mission deck companion friend has removed any mention of it having its own set pivot values. So now you just use the ones in the core rules updates and rules commentary document. So models not on round bases that are not also monsters or vehicles, like bikes, have a pivot value of 1. That is much fairer for their size. Your actual vehicles, your monsters, they all have a pivot value of 2. This sort of fixes one of the problems we had with pivot values, where if you were making a charge, you would pivot 0 inches with something like a Dark Eldar Raider. Your deep striking 9-inch charge is now a 7-inch charge because of your pointy prow. And the Dark Eldar Raider is called out as having a pivot value of 2, so that will apply when you move it to make a charge move. If through some rules concoction and rules as written, you are still able to do that and use that exploit, don't, because then you come under a different category of being a willy. No one wants you to be a willy. Rules exploits when you're trying to have fun with someone else are not a good way to go. And even if you're trying hard to win, such as at a tournament, well, those tournaments have set rules so that, yeah, you weren't doing that anyway. So let me know if you think that whole problem is now fixed. But yet again, we see that pivoting and movement rules have been changed. Maybe in the next balance patch they will be changed yet again. So if you want to see these set values for vehicles and read all the rules yourself, they are in the core rules updates and rule commentary document, and I have a link in the description for you to go there and take a look yourself. So if you were playing under the updated core rules and not the tournament version of the Pariah Nexus, now your bikes have a pivot value. There we go. I think for most players, this won't have been an issue. But there are other FAQ rules that are like, yeah, this actually affects gameplay a little bit. So torrent weapons can no longer use indirect fire. This most specifically hinders the Grey Knight Purgation squads, so they can't shoot indirectly from one side of a building to the other side of a building with their torrent weapons and ignore all of the penalties to indirect fire, because Games Workshop really loves penalties to indirect fire right now. It's okay, Exorcist. I'll still be using you. That just means Games Workshop knows how valuable you are. So vehicles in combat, big guns never tire. Well, this is more monsters, because apparently it was intended that when the monster of the Neurotyrant from the Leviathan box set joins a Zoanthrope unit, which is something it can do now, all of the models in that unit get to fire in combat with the big guns never tire rule. It's not monster models, it's monster units. And as you have a monster in that unit, that whole unit gets the monster keyword. You've always got to be checking if it's referring to models or units. For Deathwatch players, at least currently, I think this affects you the most. We have confirmation that you can target 2 units with a stratagem and modify the cost of that stratagem by 1 using something like the Captain ability. So Deathwatch can have free special ammunition on 2 kill teams because of the Captain. You can have 2 units teleport for free because of the Captain. This is all great. And it's helping the Deathwatch to win battles competitively. You know, until their rules change because they're becoming part of Imperial agents. There are more changes to the rules, but from my quick reading, they are mostly clarifications and are just how people were playing these things anyway. Like, yes, Battle Sisters can use Overwatch on units disembarking from a transport. Overwatch lets you do that. So let's talk about the Battle Sisters, the changes to the Adepta Sororitas in the FAQ. I love my sisters. I love putting my sisters on the table and playing with them. There were no major nerfs or changes to how the Adepta Sororitas play. Yay! It is almost all the same and sisters will continue to do well. Devout Fanaticism, that stratagem from the Penitent Host, it got a deserved change. It was a little bit too strong and worded unlike other surge moves. The way it was worded, when one of your Penitent units was targeted by an attack, you got to do a surge move and could move into engagement range of enemies. No bullets had to fly, you just had to be selected as a target of an attack. Now it has been changed to be more in line with other surge moves of units like the Metamorphs. You have to be shot, although, unlike other units, you don't have to take any casualties. That's how it works with the Metamorphs. So speaking of Metamorphs, the changes to the Genestealer Cult. Oh yes, we have changes, super changes. They did the thing that I asked them to do with the Metamorphs. They used my wording. Almost. Good! You can have cult icons in a unit with auto pistols, and you can be joined by a Primus or a Locus, the characters that don't have auto pistols, and it won't mess up the rule. Awesome. The way it was worded before, as soon as there was a model in that unit that didn't have an auto pistol, such as a Metamorph taking a cult icon, then you no longer had your set 6 inches Brood Surge move, you went to D6, same as if you had everyone with hand flamers. So I recommend auto pistols for the Metamorphs. I save hand flamers for the hybrids with hand flamers because they can get rerolls to their wound rolls. That's great on a unit that's already auto hitting. Now I know what tournament players will say. I know because I collabed with a Genestealer Cult tournament player. They have a preference. D6 inches is as much of a potential threat as 6 inches. So tournament players will stay 7.1 inches away so you can't have a Brood Surge into engagement range with them. Doesn't matter how you were equipped with hand flamers or auto pistols, it would be impossible to get into combat. At least from one round of shooting at them. So sure, it works on paper to stay that far away, and it works for maybe one turn. It gets a lot more messy once you get around objectives. Being 4.2 inches away from an enemy, but both of you are on the objective, it's a big change in thought. If I surge D6 inches, then maybe I won't get there. Maybe my opponent could shoot me with one unit and cause enough casualties to be able to claim that objective. But if I always go 6 inches, you have to wipe me and my feel no pain with one unit shooting. Otherwise, I'm in combat and fighting before you. The non-active player gets to pick a unit before the active player in the combat phase. So it matters. Either is fine, but I really prefer auto pistols. If you're running up the board and you're getting shot multiple times, there's an extra 12 inches, not averaging 7 inches. Metamorphs are good and just got better. But we don't have other changes I wanted implemented. Even simple things like the Benefactus. His once per game better invulnerable save still only affects him as a model, which is silly and rubbish and the unit is not worth taking. Because changing a 5+ invulnerable save to a 4+ invulnerable save, but only once and only for him, isn't doing a lot. And it's 80 points for lethal hits at range. It's not the best. This is a minor FAQ, so I wasn't expecting whole changes to army rules. But we got it! They've removed the confusing line about units in Cult Ambush also being considered to be in reserves. Some people were trying to exploit this as rules as written so you could ignore Cult Ambush, and that never seemed to be the intention. Just that rules like the Cult of Ascension bonus happened as you were set up from reserves. Cult Ambush was a kind of reserves. Well, maybe actually there was some intention behind the whole you are in reserves but also Cult Ambush reserves? Or maybe this is just a new frequently asked question clarification that Games Workshop has added in to sort of balance the Genestealer Cult. Maybe it was always meant to be true reserves. We don't know. But now, explicitly, you can arrive from Cult Ambush in your opponent's turn. Good, good. Lets you come back sooner if you died on your turn. Lets you get on the table and be ready to move and shoot and charge on your coming turn. Or just Deep Strike. We can just Deep Strike now. Great! We no longer have units locked in Cult Ambush never to return to the board because there isn't a token for them. They can Deep Strike. There are exceptions to this. Well, there's one exception to this, which I'll get onto. But your opponent being able to pick up the tokens doesn't matter because you can keep Deep Striking in from Cult Ambush. If you have tokens, you can still Deep Strike anyway, if that Cult Ambush token isn't where you want that unit to be, or if you don't want to wait until your opponent's next turn, and it's your turn because you got killed in your opponent's turn, which is when most of the time you are getting killed, you can still Deep Strike in. So Cult Ambush is no longer just a steamroller one way or the other. If I was winning with Genestealer Cult, I had board control and waves could come in after me through Cult Ambush. If I was losing, well, all my Cult Ambush blips got popped anyway, so Cult Ambush just didn't factor in. Now, if you pass a Cult Ambush test, you will get that unit back. Opponents no longer need to be fast to pick up tokens, they need to be able to screen out Deep Strike attacks. The exception unit, the unfortunate one, the unlucky one that this will all hinder, are the Jackal Bikers. They don't have Deep Strike, so they're still very restricted on the Cult Ambush front. They have to deploy back using the Cult Ambush markers, and they have to be near a board edge, and so you're only able to return in your opponent's movement phase. It's also a shame about all them stratagems that aren't worth considering. Bye bye, downtrodden masses. I never used you anyway, but it was nice to know that I had a good reason to. Now if I have no Cult Ambush markers on the board, I'm not paying 2 command points to come in from a flank, I'm just going to Deep Strike. So maybe when we get to the balance patch in a few more months' time, there'll just be a whole reworking of that stratagem. But something like shifting a blip around, but you can only have a pure strain unit come from it, could still be useful if you need a unit there right now in your opponent's turn to block an enemy charge. Potentially, there's still use from this stratagem. As the rule is explicit about Deep Striking in your reinforcement step, I don't think you can use Rapid Ingress. Rapid Ingress wouldn't be compatible with this wording of Cult Ambush. Remember, they removed the part about Cult Ambush being in reserves. That isn't there anymore. So rules like Rapid Ingress where you come from reserves, yeah, you're not in reserves. So if you want to come in on your opponent's turn, which is what Rapid Ingress lets you do, you have to use a Cult Ambush marker instead. But rejoice! This isn't a full update, just correcting some things. I assume you're very happy with these if you're a Genestealer Cult player. Let me know in the comments how very happy you are, and channel members can use my personal emoji. I am 3 von Carmian hearts happy with this. But this shouldn't be the extent of our changes to the Genestealer Cult. So I think you should have a look at what we should improve for the Genestealer Cult in this edition. My happy darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.